Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
With a glance to heaven and a blessing, a few loaves of bread and fish become a feast for thousands. He walks on water, calms the winds, and the sick are healed just by touching the fringe of his cloak. He challenges the Pharisees as hypocrites, admonishes his own disciples' little faith, and tells them to be more concerned about what is proclaimed from the mouth than how you prepare your hands before a meal. We've heard some of these stories in the past few weeks from Matthew's Gospel, and we know he doesn't hold back from the awesomeness of Jesus. We also have the more intimate images. Jesus grieving over death, seeking quiet away from the crowds, wrestling with exhaustion. But what happens when the Son of God is heard saying an ethnic slur? As Jesus and the disciples cross over the border into Tyre and Sidon, they encounter a woman seeking help for her daughter. "Lord, have mercy," she cries out. "Send her away," the disciples say. It's usually at this point when we expect Jesus to step in and tell the disciples to hold back, heal the woman. But instead, the woman's ignored. Jesus turns to his disciples and reminds them that he's only here for the lost sheep of Israel. This is a woman, a Gentile, an unclean outsider. Yet she continues to plead, "Lord, help me." And Jesus compares her to a dog. She is a Canaanite, an old enemy of Israel, religious scum. Some of our commentaries seek to soften Jesus' response here, calling it a playful gesture, or he was testing the woman's faith. Others attribute it to his exhausting journey before this. And I think maybe, if anything, we could chalk it up to a Paula Deen defense. The response to this woman came from a deep-seated prejudice that existed in this region between Jews and Gentiles, embedding itself generation after generation. And here we are captured in this Matthew's moment. The images we hold of Jesus affect how we interact with the world as a church and as individuals. We can be inspired by the miracles and humbled by his compassion. And for a moment, he stumbles. He stumbles over tradition, historical thorns, maybe even a limited vision. We already know that the disciples stumble. We stumble. We run into our own prejudices, our fears, our traditions that prevent us from fully hearing and seeing the fullness of God's kingdom. But the woman is not deterred. She claims a place in the household, not one of privilege or as an insider, but she accepts the position, the status as dog, and claims that even the dogs enjoy crumbs from the table. We hear that she kneels before Jesus, just as the Magi did at the beginning of Matthew's Gospel, the first Gentiles, recognizing the birth of a newborn king of the Jews. In one of Martin Luther's reflections on this text, he notes that the woman finds the yes in God's no. That the social norm might have said that God's kingdom was exclusive, but this woman's faith was strong enough to give her the courage to ask God to recognize her place in it as well. She places the hope in what others have discarded. That this son of David has so much power that there is enough to not only heal the house of Israel, but more than enough left over for her. She's not trying to disrupt or thwart his mission ahead. She just wants a crumb. Recognizing that even a crumb can overcome and defeat the demons in her daughter. It's at this point in Matthew where everything changes. Jesus acknowledges the woman's great faith and cures her daughter. She knew she was not worthy of God's grace, but trusted God's judgment to have mercy on her. Jesus crossed a boundary between this Jewish and Gentile territory, searching for a place to rest, maybe to hide from the crowds. But he found ministry renewed by this woman who was willing to cross the social and cultural boundaries for her daughter. After this encounter, Jesus' ministry is broadened. We get another account of a feeding of thousands. Renewed sense of just how far God's mercies reach. Our religion can act as a barrier, used by faithful people to define God's boundaries to ourselves and others, rather than experiencing religion as an entry point into the unimaginable depths of God's grace, a crumb to satisfy a soul. Throughout our history, we have stumbled over who is welcome to lead, to serve, to worship. We trip over our societal norms, get tangled up in the political webs, wounds of our past, and worries about our future. But the interaction in today's gospel opens us. It doesn't cause Jesus to become further entrenched in his righteousness or feel to restrict himself in bitterness. This interaction opens him to new insight. Today we encounter a woman who walks by faith, cries by faith, and whose fear does not keep her from imagining the possibilities of God's reach, even as she finds herself as an outsider. She taught the teacher. God's own Son came to see his life's work as bigger than before. As we continue to explore, we'll find that Matthew's story brings with it much more stumbling ahead, that the disciples' faith will continue to be tested, just like in our journeys. That in our own journeys, we'll continue to stumble. There'll be obstacles that may seem impossible to overcome, but God's grace and mercy will continue to grow and reach across the boundaries and barriers where we could never have imagined. Amen.